Do you really think someone like you deserves to carry my heir? Those were the last words Allen said before he broke Ethan completely. 2 years later, the great Allen Kingston is on his knees in front of Ethan, holding a ring and begging for a second chance. But he forgot one thing. You can't bring back a life you already destroyed. This is a story of Ethan and his alpha, Allen, who tortured Ethan and then lost himself in the endless sea of regret because of his karma. The iron gates of the Kingston estate didn't just keep the world out, they kept the oxygen from getting in. Allen Kingston stood at the entrance, his overcoat still heavy on his shoulders. He was the discarded heir who had clawed his way back to build a billion-dollar empire out of spite. He was a man who had killed his own heart long ago, and tonight, he was about to kill someone else's. His phone screen still lit with the doctor's trembling message. Sir, Mr. Ethan has fainted. He is pregnant. Around 12 weeks. I have informed you as per your instruction. He stared at the message for several seconds, neither blinking nor breathing. His jaw tightened. Something dark, old, and poisonous rose inside him. Something born from years of betrayal, from watching his father destroy his Omega mother, from growing up hated by the woman who gave birth to him. His fingers curled around the phone. Pregnant. His secretary. An Omega who once dared to reject him when they were 17, when Allen was foolish enough to believe a confession meant something. The Omega he now kept locked inside this villa, bound by a contract signed with shaking hands, begging for money to save his mother. Not knowing the chains that would come with it. Allen's pheromones stirred, sharp and cold like metal under frost, before he suppressed them completely. His voice was low, indifferent when he dialed the doctor back. Prepare a team. Tonight. He said. The doctor stuttered. Sorry, sir. Don't make me repeat myself. A pause of dread. Then came. Yes. Allen ended the call, stepped inside, and handed his coat to a servant without looking at him. His steps were unhurried, steady, each one echoing through the grand marble hallway like a sound that did not belong in a home but in a courtroom where judgment was final. There were alphas in this world who regretted their cruelty. There were alphas who hesitated. There were alphas whose instincts softened at the scent of an unmarked Omega carrying life. But Allen Kingston had killed that instinct long ago. The moment his father abandoned him. The moment his mother called him a curse. The moment he learned that people only stayed if you forced them. And Ethan? Ethan was now in the line of fire of an alpha who never forgave betrayal, real or imagined. Earlier that afternoon, Ethan had awakened on the villa's bedroom floor, cold sweat dampening the side of his neck, his Omega glands aching faintly beneath the skin. The room was bathed in soft sunlight filtering through the tall curtains, but even light felt suffocating inside this place. He pushed himself up slowly, wincing at the familiar heaviness in his body, the exhaustion that clung to him like a second skin ever since the day he signed his freedom away. The villa was beautiful. Too beautiful. A golden cage wrapped in silk, with walls so tall he felt like he was shrinking every day. Allen didn't allow him to leave without permission or talk to anyone. Didn't allow him a phone, friends, or even time alone outside the bedroom. And most cruelly of all, he never marked him. An unmarked Omega, living under an alpha's roof, constantly exposed to residual pheromones that reminded Ethan every single day who held power and who did not. All Ethan had was silence. Silence and Allen. Whenever he decided Ethan was worth acknowledging. His mother had died a few days ago after fighting illness for years. The medicines, treatments, hospital fees, it had been far beyond what Ethan could afford as a regular Omega secretary. He had tried everything. Loans, extra work, selling his belongings, but nothing was enough. So he had gone to Allen. His boss. The alpha whose presence alone made Omegas instinctively lower their gaze. The alpha who had once looked at him in college like Ethan was his entire sky. But after his rejection started to look at him with cold and hateful gaze. Ethan had expected rejection, mockery. Instead, Allen transferred the money within minutes. And handed him a contract. Sign it, Allen said. You will repay me however I see fit. Ethan had been desperate. Terrified of losing his mother. He signed. 3 months later, his mother was gone anyway. And Ethan was locked inside this villa as property. That morning, dizziness had overtaken him. A strange flutter curled low in his abdomen, warm and unfamiliar. He tried to stand. But the world tilted. Darkness swallowed him. He woke to someone calling his name. Mr. Ethan. Mr. Ethan, can you hear me? His eyes fluttered open. The villa's private doctor knelt beside him, fingers checking his pulse, expression strained. You fainted, the doctor said. You must rest. Ethan swallowed. What is it? The doctor hesitated, then spoke quietly. You are pregnant. The word struck like lightning. Pregnant. Ethan's fingers trembled against the sheets. His breath hitched violently. A child. His child. After losing his mother, after being left alone in the world, after living like an unmarked Omega trapped under an Alpha's roof. Something innocent was growing inside him. Tears spilled freely. But the doctor wasn't finished. I've informed, sir. Ethan's blood ran cold. Why? His voice barely existed. The doctor stood, face pale, stepping away. Ethan's entire body went numb. No, he whispered. No, please. The doctor couldn't meet his eyes. Ethan tried to sit up, hands shaking violently. Doctor, what did he say? What did he tell you to do? Please rest, the doctor murmured. Tell me. Silence. Ethan's world shattered. The sun had set by the time Ethan heard footsteps approaching. Heavy, synchronized, professional. His breath caught. He forced himself off the bed, legs wobbling. He grabbed the nearest vase and tried to wedge it under the door handle, hands shaking so badly he almost dropped it. The door unlocked from the outside anyway. It swung open. Ethan froze. Allen stood there with a team of doctors. Tall, sharp-featured, dressed in black, eyes colder than winter frost. He didn't look angry. He looked indifferent. As if he had already decided his fate and nothing he said would matter. Ethan stumbled back, shaking his head like a terrified child. Allen, please, his voice cracked painfully. Please, don't do this. I'll leave. I'll disappear, please don't hurt my baby. He walked inside without a word. Ethan fell to his knees before Allen, clutching the hem of his coat with both trembling hands, sobbing so hard that his body shook. Please, please. He's the only family I have left, please spare him. I'll do anything. I'll never ask you for anything again, just don't take him away from me. The doctors looked away, unable to face him. Allen finally spoke. Stand up. He couldn't. His legs had no strength. He kept crying, clinging to him desperately. Allen's voice hardened. I said stand. Ethan sobbed harder. Please. Please. His patience snapped. With a harsh motion, he grabbed Ethan's arm and yanked the Omega upward. He stumbled, nearly falling, but Allen's grip only tightened. In one swift move, he dragged Ethan across the room and threw him onto the bed. The mattress shook beneath Ethan. His breath hitched in terror. His shadow loomed over the Omega's small body, tall and merciless. Do you think that an Omega like you deserves to carry my child? He said, each word sharp as a blade. Ethan's tears flowed uncontrollably. He shook his head violently, not in denial, just in plea. No, please. Please, I beg you. Allen leaned down, his face inches from Ethan's. You signed yourself to me, he said quietly. Not to bear children. Not to play house. Not to defy me. His hand came down toward his abdomen in a slow, deliberate, terrifying way. The cold certainty in his eyes were suffocating. Out of fear, Ethan's hands shot forward to push Allen away, but he caught both of his wrists with one hand and pinned them above his head as he pressed his lower abdomen very hard. Ethan screamed painfully. Please stop. Don't do this. The Omega's voice dissolved into pained sobs. But Allen didn't listen. Be silent. He increased the pressure against his lower stomach more cruelly as the Omega's sobs grew. Ethan's scream tore through the room. The world blurred. Pain exploded. His vision dimmed. Ethan gasped for breath, the agony was too sharp, too sudden. And then everything went silent. When Ethan's consciousness flickered, he was no longer fighting. His body trembled uncontrollably, warmth spreading beneath him in a way he didn't understand at first. He saw red on the sheets. The sound of doctors rushing in felt distant, like he was underwater. Somewhere above him, Allen's emotionless voice echoed. "Treat him." Ethan tried to lift his hand, tried to reach out, tried to say no, please, but his fingers barely moved before darkness pulled him under completely. 2 years passed. 2 years since the night that shattered Ethan's spirit so brutally that it carved a permanent hollow inside his chest. An emptiness that could no longer be filled with hope, instinct, or scent. The Omega who once trembled and begged in fear had grown silent. Just moving with the mechanical obedience of someone who had long accepted that resistance was meaningless. The natural softness of an Omega had been beaten into stillness, his pheromones muted to the point of near absence, as if even his body had learned that calling for help was useless. Allen never praised him for it. But something in him changed. He liked Ethan better this way. Quiet, pliant, simple. An Omega who no longer cried during heat, no longer flinched when alpha pheromones pressed into his skin. A delicate porcelain doll placed exactly like Allen wanted. Ethan spoke only when spoken to, moved only when instructed, existed solely within the boundaries Allen allowed. The villa remained his cage, the world outside faded into abstraction. Allen's personal doctor, always on call, monitored Ethan's Omega physiology whenever necessary. Suppressants administered with clinical efficiency, questions never asked. The staff learned quickly that the Omega with soft eyes and a muted voice was not to be spoken to. Neither about his past nor present. Ethan walked the halls like a shadow. He was beautiful, breathtaking, yet hollow. For Allen, life was war. Every day was a calculated battle. Meeting investors, crushing competitors, gathering evidence against the father who had abandoned him and the stepbrother who tried to assassinate him every now and then. Allen lived with rage embedded in his blood, sharpened by betrayal and survival. And to him, Ethan's quiet obedience balanced the poison that roared through his veins. Ethan was his safe adobe. Even if that calm was forced. Perhaps that's why Allen had stopped being cruel with him. Not because he felt guilt. Allen did not entertain such weakness. But because Ethan's submission made life easier. His silence allowed Allen to believe control had finally been achieved. 2 years. 2 years of revenge, lawsuits, hostile takeovers, calculated destruction, until the day his father's empire collapsed completely. His stepbrother's reputation was ruined, assets frozen, influence erased. The debt of blood and suffering was paid in full, through annihilation. After his revenge was over, Allen felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Breath. A clear, light breath. No hatred burning through his throat. No revenge anchoring his chest. "It's over," he murmured when his father was sentenced. Finally, it's over. For the first time in decades, he wondered what life might feel like without fury driving every step. Without revenge filling the hollow inside his chest. Perhaps, it was time to settle down. He went abroad for a short business trip. A simple 3-day trip. But on the last evening of the trip, while walking down a quiet street washed in warm lantern light, Allen found himself stopping outside a jewelry store. He didn't know why he went in. Sentiment had never appealed to him. Bonds, promises, rituals, those were for people who believed affection was safe. And yet, he stood before a velvet tray holding matching rings, simple, elegant rings that symbolized commitments and promises he had never imagined himself making. Before he realized, he was handing his card to the employee, purchasing a pair of matching rings. He held the small box in his hand, staring at the rings with a strange sense of inevitability. Was it love? He didn't know, probably not. But he knew one thing with certainty: he had no one else but Ethan. Ethan had remained beside him for years, first as his secretary, then as something indistinct yet constant. He never asked for a mark. Never demanded recognition. Never interfered. His Omega instincts had long been crushed into compliance. Allen mistook that for loyalty. He believed that was enough. Maybe he can give him one more chance. Maybe having Ethan as his partner will simplify things as they were once. Maybe giving their relationship a name wouldn't be troublesome. Ethan was obedient, quiet, and useful. Perhaps, with time, he would even learn to return affection. Allen had the resources to make Ethan's life comfortable. That night, Allen imagined a future. Ethan wearing one of the rings, waiting at home and then seated silently beside him at dinner. It felt stable. But the illusion shattered the moment Allen turned on his phone after landing back in US. 32 missed calls. All from his personal secretary. A cold premonition crawled down his spine. He called back immediately. "Sir," the secretary said, voice shaking, "you need to come to the hospital. Mr. Ethan, he had complications during the procedure. Has severe bleeding. His omega physiology reacted badly, he is in danger." Allen froze. What procedure? His voice was dangerously calm. Silence. "The abortion, sir." The world tilted. "What abortion?" His tone dropped, cold, lethal. "Sir, you instructed that all matters regarding his health be handled without disturbing you. That no pregnancy was ever to be kept. That was your order." Allen's breath hitched. The secretary spoke again, barely holding himself together. "Sir, please come to the hospital." The words slammed into Allen's chest. He hadn't known. Hadn't remembered. Hadn't cared enough to ask. The car sped through the city as memories forced their way back into his mind. An omega trembling on a bed, a pleading voice. A hand pressing down on his abdomen while his small frame curling in pain. No. Allen shook the thought away violently. That night wasn't important. It wasn't supposed to matter. He had forgotten it because it was insignificant. And yet, something twisted painfully inside him. For the first time in his life, Allen felt something unfamiliar. A deep, suffocating heaviness surrounded him. He walked into the hospital lobby with clenched fists. His secretary stood waiting, face pale. Before the man could speak, Allen grabbed him by the collar. "How many times?" His voice cracked barely, but enough to shock the secretary. Three times, sir." The words slammed into him. 3 times. Ethan has suffered 3 times, without him knowing, because he had given the order. Allen slowly released the man, numbness spreading through him. He didn't speak, didn't shout, didn't even breathe. He simply stood there frozen, realizing for the first time that some sins do not disappear simply because you forget them. They wait. Quietly. Patiently. Until the day they rise. And crush you under their weight. The private hospital Ethan was rushed into wasn't just any elite institution, it was practically an extension of Allen's empire. Built during the coldest, most ruthless years of his climb to the top, the hospital stood as a monument to the man who believed control was the only way to survive. There were entire wings funded solely by his wealth, departments equipped with machines imported from various countries, specialist teams recruited with salaries that could buy small companies. It was a place where people whispered Allen's name with reverence and fear. Ironically, that reverence meant nothing now. Because the only person he wanted to open his eyes, lay pale and unmoving beneath white sheets, his scent faint and broken, caught between life and death. The doctors, usually confident and expressionless, looked uneasy the moment Allen entered the emergency wing. They had dealt with millionaires, politicians, foreign delegates, and business tycoons. But Allen's alpha pheromone carried an aura that can make anyone shudder. His restrained pheromones pressed heavily against the air, cold and absolute. His presence demanded perfection. His silence meant destruction. His footsteps down the corridor felt heavier, darker, more dangerous than ever before. When the head reproductive specialist approached, Allen took a step forward instinctively, as though expecting to be told Ethan was fine. Because he can't afford the alternative. The doctor spoke with tense professionalism, choosing each word with surgical precision. "Mr. Allen, the patient suffered complications during the procedure. He lost a dangerous amount of blood. His body went into shock." Allen's jaw tightened, but he forced himself to listen. He did not blink. The doctor continued carefully, avoiding excessive medical terminology. "His womb has been weakened by multiple previous procedures. The lining hasn't been healing properly. Each time he went through this, his body became more fragile. That is why the bleeding was so severe. Allen felt his chest tighten, but he said nothing. And because of multiple abortions, the internal structure has weakened, the doctor added. That makes hemorrhaging harder to control. The trauma keeps repeating, but his body is too exhausted to repair itself fully. And Allen finally asked, voice barely audible. The three specialists exchanged grave looks. It will be very difficult for him to carry a child in the future, the head doctor said quietly. We will do everything possible to restore his health, but the damage is significant. His body has been pushed far beyond safe limits. The chances are low. Allen didn't breathe. All because of him. Because of his orders. Because he never cared enough to remember what he had commanded. He finally spoke, voice colder than ice. How is he now? He is in coma, the doctor replied softly. We don't know when he will wake up. He has suffered extreme shock, physically and emotionally. Sometimes the mind shuts itself down to survive. Emotionally. Yes. Allen had destroyed Ethan emotionally long before he destroyed him physically. When the doctors left, Allen stood alone in the dim corridor, staring at the ICU doors with an unsettling emptiness. He had faced hostile boardrooms, family betrayal, his father's manipulation, and a mother who resented him for existing. None of that had brought him to his knees. But Ethan had. Or rather, his sins against Ethan had. That night, Allen sank into the chair beside Ethan's hospital bed. His elbows rested on his knees, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles turned white. Machines beeped steadily, filling the silence he couldn't escape. Ethan's scent was barely there, mild, nearly non-existing, nothing like the soft warmth it once carried. Allen forced himself to look at his face. The same face that once bowed quietly in his office. The same face that tried to smile even when trapped and obeyed every cruel order without protest. But now he looked like he would break at any moment. So fragile and breakable. Allen had reduced him to this. He tried to speak, but his throat locked. He closed his eyes and pressed his forehead to the edge of the bed, breathing hard, uneven, like a man drowning. And memories surged back. The night Ethan begged him. Hands trembling against his legs, voice breaking, eyes swollen with tears. Allen remembered how cold he had been. How irritated he felt that Ethan dared to defy him. And then. The moment that broke Ethan completely. The moment he pushed Ethan onto the bed and Ethan cried, begging him not to hurt his child. The moment Allen's hand pressed against his lower abdomen. And Ethan screamed. Not in detail but enough. Enough for Allen to remember his own ruthlessness, to remember the blood afterward, to remember that he ended that life with his own hands. His first child. A life he never valued. Allen squeezed his eyes shut, lips trembling. I killed them, all four of them. His voice broke. For children, he whispered again, forcing the truth deeper into his skin. For lives that never saw the world because they had a monster instead of a father. The word father tasted poisonous. He had become exactly like the man he hated. The man who ruined his mother. The man who treated children as burdens. Allen clutched his chest as the pain rose. I'm just like him, he whispered. I swore I'd never be him, but I ruined my family before it even existed. A dry, broken laugh escaped him. I'm cursed, he muttered. Cursed to repeat everything I hate. He covered his face with both hands. He had always believed he didn't need love. Didn't deserve it. But losing Ethan felt like losing the last fragment of light in his life. And Ethan wasn't even gone. He simply wasn't waking up. 16 days of this. 16 days of watching Ethan's chest rise and fall only because machines demanded it. 16 days of hearing nurses whisper about the alpha who sat beside a coma patient like a man already grieving. 16 days of refusing rest, sleep, food. Of whispering please wake up, of hating himself more than he had ever hated his father. On the 15th night, something inside Allen broke. He sank to the floor beside the bed, not caring about appearances, not caring about dignity. He pressed his forehead against Ethan's limp hand. Ethan, you don't know, he murmured. You were the only part of my life that wasn't filled with hatred. And I destroyed even that. His breath hitched. I didn't know. I didn't realize when you became the only one who stayed. The only one who didn't leave. I thought having you beside me was enough. He swallowed hard. I didn't know I fell in love with you. Though he knew that the words were useless now. If you hate me when you wake up, I'll accept it. If you never want to see me again, I'll accept it too. His voice softened. Just live. That's all I want now. He lifted his head. Let your hatred be the punishment I carry for the rest of my life. On the 16th morning, the silence broke. Just a movement of fingers. Allen's eyes snapped open. And finally, Ethan opened his eyes, slowly, weakly, painfully. His gaze was unfocused, distant. Allen leaned forward, heart pounding. Ethan, can you hear me? Ethan blinked. His lips trembled. And when his eyes settled on Allen, there was nothing. No fear, no affection, no anger, only emptiness. An emptiness deeper than hatred. An emptiness Allen had created. Ethan was alive. But something inside him had died forever.